Today we're going to be creating a Vue 3 app that has a form that will allow us to create an account, to log into this account, to see the current user session, and log out of that account. And by using these functions, we'll be able to go to the secret page. Right now we are unauthorized, but if you log in, hit this login button, and now we are logged in. We get the user session. We can go hit see user. We can see the current user session right here. And then we can go to the secret page and we get access to this protected content that we can't see. And then when we go here, we can hit log out. It logs us out. It's a sign out success in the console right here. We go back and we see we're unauthorized. So we're going to get authorization, and as well, we're going to get authentication in this application. Let's get started. In this project, we're going to be using Supabase to do our authorization and authentication. We'll show you how to make your project on there as well. Now we're just going to show you how this application works at a bare bones perspective. We'll have instructions for you to get this application from the starter point so you can follow along with us. There'll be instructions in the description. Now let's get started. Here is the app page, and we are using Vue Router, and we have some links right here, router links that go to home, secret, and login that allow us to go to all the different pages. And you'll see right now we don't have this protected. We have access to it right now, and we're not even showing our account. So we're at the basic bare bones stage of this application. And here in this router view, we are displaying all the content from our views. That's in this folder right here called the views. And we have 4 views. We have a home view, a login view, a secret view, and the unauthorized view. So the home view, which is this page, is just some markup, nothing really special going on. And then in the login view, we currently have 2 inputs. We have an email input and a password input that's going to absorb or accept input from the user. And then we have 4 buttons: create, login, see user, and log out. And these will all be connected to a function that will allow us to basically do all of those functions as it says: create an account, log into an account, see the current user session, and log out of that account. We have right here marked up some comments. We're going to connect the inputs. We're going to create an account using, this is basically a function. We're going to make a login function to log in, and then we're going to make a function to see what the current user is, and then we're going to make a function to log out using Supabase. Then we have the secret view right here. We're going to display the user email right here, and then we're going to get the user email and then use that to show it on the screen. And because we are receiving the email from a database, it's going to be an async function, so we're going to have to do some logic right here. And lastly, we have this authorized view. It just has a link to the login, and this is going to be the page that we go to when we're unauthorized to go to the secret page. And then we have this router, which has our routes connected. We're using Vue Router. Just some basic routes are made right here. This is what Vue Router gives you when you download it with your Vue project using Vue at latest. And we're going to write 2 functions. We're going to actually write 1 function. We're going to write a getUser function, and then we're going to write some logic right here to manage our authentication or our authorization. So basically, we're going to write a loop right here that's going to say, hey, when we get to this page, the secret page, we're going to make sure that the user cannot go to this page unless they are logged in and have authorization. And now let's get started. So the first step here is to connect the inputs, the email and the password input. So we're going to go ahead and import ref from Vue. And then we're going to use this ref to make some variables. So we're going to say let email equal ref, and then put an empty string. And then we're going to say let password equal ref and an empty string. And I see a little bit of a mistake right here. It says for email, it should be for password. And let's make this from Vue. Great. Now we have the ref inputs, and we just got to use vModel. And vModel allows a 2-way connection between the variable and the input. So whatever we enter into this input will be then put into these variables right here. So for the email, we're going to put vModel is equal to email. And for the input password, we're going to say vModel is equal to password. And right now, these 2 inputs are now connected to these 2 variables right here. Now let's create all of these functions just to make sure we can get them connected to these buttons real quick. So we're going to say function create account is equal to console log create account, and then we'll go ahead and copy paste this and make all the necessary changes that we want to make. So we're going to call this one login, and then this one login, see current user, and basically we're just going to do the same thing for all of these. And then write logout. And then we're going to connect all of these functions to these corresponding buttons right here using click handlers. And so this will be create account. We'll go ahead and copy this as well and just do the same exact thing and label them all correctly. All right, now just to make sure we did this all correctly, we're gonna go back to our page. All right, so now that we have the console open, we just wanna make sure all these buttons are connected. So it says create account, log in, see current user, and log out. So we have all of these buttons connected correctly. There's one more thing we wanna do. We just wanna make sure we're getting the inputs from our V models right here. So we're gonna go to create account because it's the first thing, the first function that we're gonna make. And we're just gonna say we want to go ahead and print out email and password. And the values as well because they're refs. All right, so now that we have that, let's go ahead and go back to our page right here. We're gonna refresh it and we're gonna enter some information. We'll say test, and then this will be test 1, 2, 3, and then we're gonna hit create, and we see the information right here, test and test 1, 2, 3. Now we're gonna go to Supabase, and we're gonna create a project using Supabase, which will allow us to use a database for authentication and authorization. So Supabase, link will be in the description. Go ahead and create your account. It's pretty straightforward. And now I'm going to show you how to create a project. Now that you're logged into Supabase, go ahead and click the new project button at the top left and click new organization and just give it an organization name. It could be anything. I'm just going to write test 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to say personal, create organization. And then it's going to ask for a project name. I'm going to say test Supa login. And then it's going to ask for you to type in a strong password. I would just recommend generating a password by Supabase. Go ahead and copy that and save it somewhere safe where you can get access to that again. And then as well, I'm going to just choose the closest location to me, and I'm going to choose the free $0 a month plan. And I'm going to say create project. All right, when your project is done loading up, it's going to give you your project API keys and the project configuration. For this specific project, we're going to need this API key right here. It's the public API key and this URL key or link right here. And that's the two things we're going to need for our project. And if you happen to, miss out on that page and you need to find that page again, go ahead and hit this settings button at the bottom left. And then you will want to click API in the project settings, and that will give you access to your URL and your project API key. And in your project, you're going to create a file called .env.local. Usually it's .env for most accounts or most applications, but in this case, because we're using Vue, it's going to be .env.local. And you're going to create vite_supa URL, and that's when you're going to put your URL in, and then you're going to create vite_supa key, and that's when you put your key in. And basically, since we're using Vite, your env variables are going to have to be preceded by vite_, just because that's how Vite works. And now we're going to create our client to connect to Supabase. So create a folder called clients. And then you're going to create supabase.js. This is a JS file. We're going to write import, and then we're going to say create client from @supabase/supabase.js. Now we got to make sure with our project that we have Supabase installed. So if you're running, go ahead and hit Control-C to get out of your application, and then we're going to hit npm install supabase/supabase.js at latest. And so that's what you need to write, and then click enter, and it's going to install Supabase for you in your project. All right, now we're done. We can go ahead and start running our application again. Great. Now let's go ahead and make our get our Supabase URL and key from our env file. So we're going to call this Supabase URL. And then we're gonna have to write import.meta.env.vite_supa URL. Now, in most cases, in most applications, you usually see process.env dot, and then the file name, in this case would be vite supa URL, right? But because we're using Vue 3, it's just the way it works for Vue 3. Our imports are going to look like this instead. Now const supabase key equals import dot meta env. Make sure we get this one correct. And vite_supa key. All right, so we got our two variables from our env file. Now we just got to create the client and then export it. So we're going to write export const supabase, and this is our client that we're going to export from this file. And we're going to say create client, which is what we just imported right here. And we're going to write some parentheses, and then we're going to insert our two variables. We'll insert the URL, supabase URL, and then we're going to insert the key, supabase key. All right, and that's all we need to do to activate our client to connect to the database we created in Supabase. And just a little quick aside, just in case you don't understand env variables a ton yet. Basically, an env file like this is meant to store really private information. So when you push to GitHub, your GitHub does not take this file and put it on for everyone to see in public. And so we're able to access those private variables using the env file and then typing it in this type of syntax right here. And then we have the super secret keys safely stored away from the public so that we can then use them to connect to our database. So other people can't use our database and make a bunch of changes that admins can do. Now, having said that, let's go ahead and connect this database to our login page. So we're now in our login view page. Let's go ahead and go down to our script, and we're going to import our Supabase client from clients/Supabase right here. And so now we have the Supabase client. We can now access the client to do create account, login, and sign out functions. What we're going to do is first create the account using an email and a password in this create account function right here. So now we're going to write the create account function. This is an async function because we're getting information from a database, so it's not instant in your program. So you have to say async to let it know that you're going to wait some data. And we're going to go ahead and create a const right here. And we want to pull out two things from this function we're about to write. We're going to pull out the data and the error. And so we're going to say equals await and supabase.auth.signup and parentheses, and this is going to accept an object. And so what this is saying right here is, hey, I want to create two variables, data or error, and I want to await information from this function that Supabase provides us. And this is going to give us either the data or the error that is provided. And this has to be data or error. It cannot be named anything else, or you're not going to receive the information you want. And this object takes in different properties. And the two properties we're going to do is email, and we're going to insert the email.value from our variable right here, our ref variable. So whatever the user puts inside the email, we're going to put that right here. And then we're going to put in a password and call it password.value, so we get the information from the password that the user provides. And that's all we really need in order to have a user sign up. But so we get some information back, we got to do some error checking. And we're going to say if there is an error, we want to console log that error. And if there is an error, so else, we're going to say console.log the data. And so we can get that information. And so if it goes incorrectly, we're going to see the data in our console. And if there's an error, we'll see an error in our console. So if we go back here, let's go to refresh this page. We're going to put in an email, call this email right here. And we're going to put in a password. And then we're going to hit this create button. and then we receive an object. It says the session is null currently just because we created the account, but we do receive the user object, and this is saying we did create the account, and this is the information that's going to be put into this account. And you can see some different fields like email, the ID of this user, the user metadata, which we are going to talk about soon, about how we can insert our own metadata if we want. But for now, this is what we have. And we can go to our database, our Supabase database, and go to authentication on the left right here. It's called authentication. Looks like some little people, and hit refresh. And you'll see that we have an email here that has been created for an account, and it's saying waiting for verification. So if you go to your Gmail or whatever email that you used, you'll see here that we have this confirm your sign up link from Supabase, and you hit confirm mail, and it returns us back to our application. We're just going to go ahead and go back to Supabase, refresh it. And you'll see we do not have the waiting authentication anymore. We have been authenticated. Now we're going to go back to our application, and we're going to create the login function and the see current user function. Our login function will allow us to log in. So it'll be like if we hit login and log into that specific account, it will create a session for us. And then in see current user, if we have a session, it's going to go ahead and get that session and show us the user. And that's what we're going to do now. So in the login function, it's an async function because we're also getting information from the database. We're saying, hey, check with the database if we have this account. We'll get const. You want the data and the error. I'm going to say await Supabase .auth.sign in with password. And sign in with password also accepts an object. And we're going to say we want to put the email from the user and the password from the user. And then we're going to do some error checking as well with this, the same exact thing that we did with the last one. And then before we even test that, we're going to create the see current user function so we can go ahead and check if we have a session from logging in. And what we're going to say is const local user, and we're going to await. And remember, this is an async function as well. These are all going to be async functions. And we're going to await Supabase .auth, and we're going to get the session. And then we're going to print that out into the log so we can go ahead and see what the session is. So go ahead and save that. We now have our two functions created. We have to connect these. Oh, they're already connected with our event handlers. Let's go ahead and test them out. Let's see if we are currently logged in. If we hit see user, we do see we have some data right here. So we have a session. And we have the user right here. So we do have a session from creating the account. So Supabase does create a session after you create your account, but we're going to hit the login first and see if we can log into our account using this. Log in, and then it returns us the object if we have an account. Let's go ahead and write something that we don't have, right? We haven't made this email yet. If we hit login with this, you see we have an error because we haven't created an account with this email. But if I change it back to 4, when I hit login, I do receive an object. And if I hit see user, I do get that object out from Supabase that shows me that I have a user logged in. Now let's go ahead and create the logout function so we can log out, so we can test the full cycle of this to make sure we understand exactly what's going on. Const error, because we're only going to see if we get an error, because if you log out, you're not really trying to receive any data. We're going to say await Supabase.auth.sign out. That's all we need. It doesn't really need to receive any object. What it's going to do is basically say, hey, do we have a session right now? And if we do have a session, take that session and log it out. And this is also async. And then we're going to do some error checking. And console log that error. And else we're going to say console.log logout has been successful. All right, we have our 4 functions created. Let's go ahead and test them all out to see it all works correctly. Let's go ahead and hit see user. See, we have a user already logged in. We're gonna hit logout, and it says logout has been successful. Let's refresh the page and hit see user. See, it says null. There is no user right now. Null error, session null. There is no information because there is no user logged in. Let's go ahead and create or log into our account again. And hit login, and we see we receive a user object. Let's just go ahead and hit see user, and we do receive that user object in the session. And we can then go ahead and hit log out. And logout has been successful. If we hit see user again, we'll see that we no longer have any information. So now we're able to create an account, log in with that account, see if there is a user currently logged in, and then log out of that account. All right, and now we have 2 more things that we want to do. We have this secret page. Right now we have access to it, but if we don't have an account, as of right now, if we go to see user and we have no session, we should not be able to see this page. So we're going to program that in. As well, we were talking about user metadata, right? So if we log in and there's some user metadata, we want to make sure that we can enter some user metadata depending on our needs. Maybe there's different levels of access for users, and some users have basic access and some users have advanced access, and we can put that in our metadata. So that's what we're going to create now. In our metadata, we're just going to enter the user's first name when we create an account, and we're going to create a new account. So back here, we're going to create another form input. So we're going to copy and paste this. And here we're just going to make this name. We're going to ask for the user's first name. And this is going to be type name and ID name. And it will be connected to the name variable. And we'll go back down here and create another ref variable called name. We'll say it's equal ref, empty string, just like what we did before. And instead of just, there's no name object here that we can put in, or no name property and sign up. Instead of that, we have an options property that will allow us to access our metadata. So you can type options, and then we have to make some curly brackets. And in here, we're going to type data. And this is another property in the options. And we can then now start inserting our own metadata inside this data object right here. And we're just going to say first underscore name. And we want to insert name.value. So what this is doing is we have this input right here, and it's going to be connected with vModel. And in vModel is connecting to this variable called name. And so whenever the user inputs any information in here, that will be put into this ref variable. And when we then create an account, it's going to look inside this name variable right here. It's going to insert it in the options and data, which is created by Supabase. And I'm going to include all the documentation to all these different functions right here that Supabase provides us, so you can look at that at yourself. But this is the options data that we have, and we can put in the metadata the first name and the name that we are providing. So let's go ahead and save that and go back to our application, refresh, and we're going to create a new account. And instead of 407, we're going to put 307. It's another email account that I'm using. And we're going to put a password. And then I'm going to redo that password just to make sure I get it correct. And then we're going to put a name. I'm going to put my name, Brian. So that should allow us to enter our email, our password, and then put some metadata in as our first name, Brian. So we're going to hit create account. And now we have a user here. Let's go ahead and click here. And we see here that the user metadata has some metadata this time. And it says first name is Brian. We'll see right here if we're going to go ahead and hit log out, refresh. We're going to go to our other account, the 407 account, the one that we created first. And I'm going to go ahead and type the password and log in, we receive the object, and if you look, there is no metadata in this one. There's only metadata in the other account, the one that we just created. So now you know about metadata just in case you want to insert your own metadata. So let's go ahead and create access to the secret page so that we can protect this page. And if we don't have access, we're going to have this unauthorized page that we go to that says we're unauthorized if we can't access that page. All right, we're going to finish this tutorial with writing some logic in the router in router index.js. So we're going to go to the router and we're going to import the Supabase client because we need access to the session. And then we're going to write a variable called let local user, and this is going to be the variable that we store the user session in. And so we want to make sure that we understand exactly what we're just about to do right here, because it can get a little confusing. So we have a getUser function, and then we're going to write a loop that checks every time the user switches a page. And what we're going to do is this loop is going to check, hey, is the user switching a page? Okay, it is. Okay, let's go ahead and check some logic here. And if this page requires authentication, we're going to call the getUser function and make sure that the user has a session to see if they have access to this page. So let's just go ahead and start writing that. We're going to access the router. We're going to say before each. And when we write this loop, we have to give 3 functions: to, from, and next. And we're going to only use to and next, and I'm going to explain exactly what they do. We're going to say if to.meta.requires auth, run some logic right here. We're going to just console log requires auth. But if it doesn't require auth, then go ahead and go to next. All right, so what's going on right here? So basically, every time the user tries to go to another page, we run this loop. And the to is the page that we're going to. And it's saying, hey, if the page requires authentication, go ahead and log requires auth. But if it doesn't require authentication, just go to that next page. Now, how do we know if a page requires authentication? Well, there's something we can write in these paths right here, right? We have the home path, the secret path, the login path that allows us to go to different pages in Vue. We're going to write a meta tag right here. And in this meta object, we're going to say requires auth and true. So this is saying this path requires authentication. None of these other pages require authentication because we haven't included this tag for all of these different routes. So what is going to happen is every time we try to go to the secret page, it's going to check if there's authentication required, and then it's going to print this out. But for all of the other pages, it's going to say, oh, it doesn't require authentication. Just go to that next page. Let's test this out. Let's go to home, login, see nothing is happening. But if we go to secret, we see it says require auth. And that means we need to do something with this to check if there's a current user session to see if the user is authenticated and has authorization. So we're going to call a function called getUser. And in this getUser function, we're going to insert the next function as a parameter because we want access to that next function so we can make sure we can navigate the user with this function. This is going to be an async function because we're going to go ahead and get the user session here. We're going to say getUser and async function. And in this function, we're going to go ahead and get the current user session. We're going to say await supabase.auth.getSession. So right now we have the session, and that will allow us to say, hey, we want to insert in local user the current user session, and we're going to wait for this to finish before we enact any other logic. And after that is done, we're going to write some logic here. We're going to say local user data.session is equal to null. And so why am I writing all of these .data.session, etc.? Let's go ahead and comment this out to show you exactly why. Console.log local user. So let's go ahead and run that. And you'll see we receive an object. And we don't have any user yet. So let's go ahead and log in just so I can show you what should be here. All right, now we have a user session. Let's go ahead and refresh. And so if you have a user session and we go here, it will return us some data. And in this object that we're printing out, so this console log right here is printing that out, we're getting some data and we're getting a session. And then we get a bunch of information in this session. And this is the information that we're trying to access. And so if you say local.data.session, we go back to the secret, you see, we get a bunch of information that we're trying to access. But if we log out, let's go ahead and log out. See, logout has been successful. And we go back to that page. Let's refresh, go back to the page. It says null. So that allows us to create some logic. So basically it says, hey, if there is no session, because it's equal to null, we want to make sure we navigate the user or the person currently on the page to a page that they can go to, which is the unauthorized page, to let them know, hey, you're not logged in, you're unauthorized, go here. But if there is a user, we will just say, go ahead, you're allowed to go to the page that you chose to go to. Now let's go ahead and test this out. Refresh. So we have this next is not defined error. Let's go back. I forgot to do one thing, which is put a parameter in here, next, right? Remember that we said get user next. We're inserting the next function as a parameter in here that allows us to use next in this function. So now it should work. Fresh. Try to go to secret and we're unauthorized. Go back to the login page. Try again, unauthorized. Let's go ahead and log in now and see if we can get some authorization to access this page. Log in. We're now logged in. Go to secret, and we now have access to this protected content. We have one last thing we want to do, and we want to show the current user account on this page. So let's go ahead and go to the secret view. And we're going to import Supabase here. And we also want a variable, a ref variable. Basically, a ref variable allows us to make it reactive, so we can change data on the page when we get that data. And we're going to say const account is equal to ref. And so now we have a ref variable called account that allows us to print some information out over here. And we now want to get this information that we're trying to show, which is the account. So we're going to say async function getSession, and we're going to say account.value is equal to await supabase.auth.getSession. And then now we get the session here. Oh, I made a mistake. Await supabase.auth.getSession. And so every time we call getSession, it's going to put the session into this ref variable right here. And then let's go ahead and call getSession. And now we just need to display the account right here. So let's go ahead and get rid of this tag, or we can just keep the tag. And we're going to put some curly braces here. We're going to say account.data.session.user.email. So basically we're just traversing this object until we get to the email. And so now when we go to this page and we have access, it should show our email. And right now it shows our email, and that's it. All right, so let's just do a quick review of everything that we just did. So as the base of this project, we made sure we created a client connected to Supabase, got the Supabase URL and the Supabase key from the .env file right here. Remember, they have to be preceded by a vt underscore. And then as well, we then created our 4 functions to create an account, to log in, to secure a current, or to see a current user, and to log out. And we showed you how to build all of those functions using Supabase. And then when we created those functions, we showed you how to create authorization for the secret page right here, right? Because this page is protected. And then we also showed you how to access the user email from your current session. Just to show you one more time in the router, we went into the router, we created a meta tag right here that says, hey, this is requiring, the secret page requires authentication. And then we created some logic right here. We basically said, hey, every time the user tries to switch to a different page, we're checking if it requires authorization. If it doesn't, just go to the next page. But if it does, we call this getUser function. And then we say, hey, do we have a current session for a user? And if we don't, go to the unauthorized page. But if there is a session, go ahead, you're allowed on the secret page. And that is it. That is the basics of this application. If you found this video useful in any way, please head to my website, link in the description. There is going to be a free course. You can sign up for the waitlist, just your first name and your email. Go ahead and sign up. I will release a free course in the near future, 100% free forever, basically teaching you the fundamentals of Vue 3. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.